All right. Well, welcome to the live. Basically, I'm going to be talking about autograph collecting in 2024. And my main focus is on through the mail autograph collecting. So that's basically kind of like a derivative of fan mail. Essentially, you're just sending fan mail to a celebrity and you're asking them for an autograph as part of the request. And while a lot of the stuff in the hobby has kind of remained the same in the last like 100 years or so, there are some kind of nuances, and the hobby has morphed and shifted a little bit as technology has changed. So, we're going to be talking about collecting autographs through the hobby, contacting celebrities, actors, influencers, and this can be to request an autograph, but people also use it for like business outreach or just to, sometimes they have a question that they want to ask somebody. So, you can get like an informed opinion from somebody who's an industry leader, perhaps that kind of thing. It's a broad hobby and it can be tailored to your specific goals and interests. So that's kind of what makes through the mail autograph collecting such a fun and interesting hobby. And like I said, it's more than just about autographs. Like personally, I like to do Q&As when I send out stuff. So if I'm writing to a specific actor whose work I really liked, if I have a question about a project that they've been on, I can just go ahead and include a little, maybe like a brief 4-question questionnaire, because I don't want to, even though I might have a lot of questions, I don't want it to be too imposing that they don't want to take their time to like sit there and fill it out. So I want to kind of keep it brief, keep the most important questions um, that I want for them so I can kind of get a response. And they'd be surprised at the amount of responses that I get. Sometimes it's not just them signing something for me, like a photo or an index card, but they'll go ahead and they'll send a nice letter, fill out those responses. Or if it's an artist, sometimes I'll get like sketches back, or I'll get like, stickers from production that they were working on, that kind of stuff. So you get all kinds of cool stuff by doing this hobby. Um, Now, 2024, there's kind of like this perception that because this hobby has been around so long and like people have essentially been doing it since like the same since really as long as there's been actors, people have been asking for these autographs and doing it through the mail, either sending letters to the production studios like MGM and these big studios back in Hollywood. They would all get this fan mail and route it to the actors, and they would send out signed headshots, that kind of thing. So this whole hobby has been around for a long time. It was really big, I think, in the 80s. It had kind of like a peak there. There was like magazines dedicated to it where you would get like addresses and stuff like that. But with, of course, the advent of the internet, the hobby has really gotten a lot easier for many people because you can find addresses very easily. There's all kinds of resources out there, and there's also additional tools as well. Like there's all these market research tools and tools that are meant really to help connect people who are looking for jobs or looking for industry contacts, but they can be really well utilized for the fan mail hobby. So like something like hunter.io, which is this program where you can put in any domain, for example, nintendo.com, and it has already scraped the internet for all of the email addresses, for example, with the nintendo.com domain, and it'll kind of return all the email addresses that it found so you can reach out to like a Nintendo employee, that kind of thing. So this can be used for production studios, for like, Lucasfilm, that kind of thing. You could type in lucasfilm.com and you could get all these people who are visual effects artists or production managers, these people who are visionaries behind Star Wars, that kind of thing. And you could reach out to them and request an autograph that way. But more often than not, people who are practicing the through the mail autograph collecting hobby, they're probably still doing it actually through the mail rather than email or some of these high-tech newer innovations in the hobby. They're probably still doing it the same way that somebody would recognize 100 years ago, basically. So essentially what you need, even in 2024, is basically a piece of paper to write a letter, either handwritten or typed. Some people swear by one or the other. I type all my letters. I have great success with it. I've never had anyone complain about typewritten letters from me, and my handwriting just is not that great. It takes too much time. It's a little bit hard to read. So personally, I find that typewritten letters a lot better. You just need 2 envelopes. So I have all my supplies over here. You have a number 10 envelope, which is just a standard envelope. And then I use a number 9 envelope, which is just slightly smaller. You can see that it fits within the silhouette of the envelope. So the number 10, the big one, is the outer envelope. You just put the destination right here. So this is like an antiquated art form. Like I know a lot of people, younger kids, like they don't know how to address an envelope, but it's nothing to be intimidated about. It's all good. You just put the destination right here in the middle, and then your address goes on the top left. So this is the return address area, and the stamp goes on the top right, and then it's good to go. So you just put your letter inside here. You put something to sign. Not a whole lot fits in these little envelopes. An index card works really well, or a trading card works really well, especially if you're doing sports. Trading cards are probably the best thing to send because they're cheap. They fit very nicely in here, and they look good signed, and they're collectible. So trading cards, also a safe bet. On the return envelope, this is what they're going to get. And when they get your letter, they see your card or whatever that you sent, they're going to sign it, and they're going to need to return it to you somehow. So rather than them having to pay out of pocket, they can use this return envelope. So you're going to have your address here in the center as the destination, and then their address would be the return address up here, and then a stamp there. So that's basically all you need. And the supplies themselves, I mean, it costs less than $1 for you to send out a request to somebody and ask for an autograph. And, you know, it really doesn't get any cheaper than that. Like, even if you go and get somebody at like a ball game or something like that, I mean, you're going to have to pay for a ticket to get in there. And even if you just happen to meet somebody on the street, odds are you're probably going to have to wait outside for hours on end. So you're paying with your time at the very least. So this is the most economical way to make contact with somebody and get an autograph for what is essentially free. So it's a very cool way of doing it. This last year, I had a lot of successes. There's different ways that you can contact celebrities and, you know, people of note through this method. One can be through an agent. Like a lot of these actors, they have agencies that represent them. They got managers, legal representatives. They've got all kinds of different associations and agencies that represent their interests in various forms. And you can potentially reach them through contacting one of their agents. There's also another method, which is called via venue. Essentially, that's where you are writing the celebrity at a venue that they're going to be appearing at. This is like a temporary location. So for actors, that's basically if they happen to be appearing in a Broadway play or in the London equivalent, which would be the West End. If they're going to be in a play for a number of months, then you can write to the theater that they'll be playing, starring in. And during that time, a lot of times after the show's over, they'll take a couple minutes to sit down and respond to some fan mail. So that's a very good way, even to like get some actors who otherwise like are very hard to contact through the mail. If they're doing a stint on Broadway or the West End, I've had some really good success getting some of those harder to get actors. Like I recently got Hugh Jackman when he was doing The Music Man. And, you know, I had tried previously for years to get him like through an agent and that kind of stuff. And that had never worked out for me. But getting him on Broadway actually worked. So you can try that. And sometimes you can just write your letter directly to the actor there on Broadway, or you can write to the stage manager. And I've got some really good results writing to the stage manager and just asking for a signed playbill, which is like the schedule that they give out at every play, basically, if you don't know what a playbill is. And I've gotten like complete Broadway casts signing the playbill that way. So that's been really cool. Same kind of concept works for musicians. Like if they're going to be playing at a venue and, you know, because they have their whole tour listed out, right? So you know exactly what date they're going to be playing at a specific venue. So you just plan out like a week in advance, because you need to make sure that, you know, if your letter arrives after they've already played at the venue, then, you know, there's no way that it's going to get to them. If it arrives too early, then it might get lost and forgotten about. So it's kind of like a little bit of a game of timing and like hoping that you get the perfect timing for your letter to arrive. And given the unpredictability of USPS that makes it a little bit hard. But sending a fan letter via venue to a concert is definitely possible, and you can potentially get a singer from one of your favorite bands or a comedian that you really like by actually just sending a letter to the concert hall or theater that they're going to be at. Similar thing for athletes. So it's a very popular thing to send to. Usually they have a spring training stadium, and they have like a stadium that they play their games at. So when they're doing their training, see, we're having trouble hearing me, I guess. Let me move this a little bit closer. Yeah, so when sports teams are doing spring training, you can send to the stadium that they're doing the spring training at, or if they're in the regular season, you can send them to that stadium. And yeah, so it works just the same for athletes. So you got to kind of think of like, where are these guys going to be working at? Where are they going to be appearing at on a regular basis? And you can send your letter to that place, and you can request an autograph that way. Typically, you're going to want to address to the specific player that you're writing to. It's possible that you might be able to address to the manager and ask for like multiple autographs, but you're going to have better luck writing to a specific player, I've found. So next, I think it's probably important to talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that you're going to be sending. So if you're only going to be sending like one or two fan letters like every so often, then cost doesn't really factor into it much, because the cost is fairly low, especially if you're only doing a couple of requests. But if you're doing like a pretty big volume of fan mail and you're asking for a lot of autographs, like even if you were just sending a letter to every person on a single sports team, the cost of that could like add up pretty darn quick. So when you're just sending like 2 envelopes here, a couple of stamps, which are about 60 cents each, and a letter and a couple index cards, you're at about $1 per request, right? But if you start getting into things like photos, which are can be somewhere around the $4 range per photo, sometimes a little bit cheaper, $3 or so. And you're sending out, probably usually people send about 2 photos per request. So that's about $6 in photos. The postage then goes up because you're sending out a larger format. It's probably going to be rigid because it's got backing. So all that stuff is going to add to the price of the shipping. So now you're probably in about maybe $6 each way. So about $12 there for shipping there and back, and then another $6. So you're talking about probably $18 per request at that point if you're doing photos, rather than the single dollar for just sending out a photo with an index or a trading card. So if you're just doing a couple of requests, then that $18 per request might not be that bad. But if you're doing big volume, then that can add up very, very quick, and the hobby can get expensive. So you kind of got to think about what exactly you want to do, how much you want to pay, and like what the volume is. But ultimately, if you get a signed photo back, you're getting something that's worth more, of course. Like, it's going to have more resale value if you did at some point wanted to resell your collection. A signed photo is going to be worth a lot more than usually a trading card or just a blank signed index card. So if you put in a bigger investment up front, potentially you could have a bigger return on that investment later on if you decide to resell. So that's one factor. But with only a few exceptions where I send out photos, I basically almost always just send out index cards. I think it's the best way to go about it. You don't have to worry too much if you don't get a response, because you're not out that much money, and they also can look really nice when you frame them up. Like, you can put them in like an 11 by 14 inch frame, like a really big frame, and that will accommodate a smaller like cutout. If you put a mat in there, you can have a cutout for an 8 by 10 photo, and then the 3 by 5 index card underneath that's signed, and that looks really good paired with the photo. So and then you're not kind of limited to what photo that you have. Like, when you get a photo signed, like, that's it, the photos on that are the signatures on that one photo. But if you have an index card, you can kind of swap the photo out to your liking. Like, if it's an actor, you might prefer one movie that they're in, But they might come out with something that's more to your liking later. You can always just swap out the photo to like whatever the new role is, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit more versatile. It's cheaper and it still looks good framed. So for me, I think index cards is kind of the way to go. However, there's like not all index cards are created equal. You can get the index card that you get at like Target, which is just a flimsy piece of paper. Typically, it's hard to find ones that are blank on both sides. So I recommend going to Amazon. They have these archival quality cards. They're on like really thick stock, so they feel sturdy and like really good. They're also acid free. So like a regular index card, the paper is made with acid in it. It's slightly acidic. And it's not like that big of a deal if you're just using it to study for an exam or whatever. But if you're having an autograph on it and something that you want to keep for a really long time, like eventually that acid is going to make the index card turn it a little bit yellow, right? And it's going to start to discolor and it's not going to look very good displayed, and it's going to, not be good for the autograph long term. So it makes sense to just spend a couple more pennies on like a higher quality index card because it still costs like almost nothing, but you're getting something that's acid free, it's archival quality, it's super thick, it looks a lot better framed, and it's blank on both sides. Because like what you don't want is to send out that flimsy index card from Target that has the ruling on one side, which is the lines on there. You don't want it to be, you don't want to send it out with the lines and they sign on the lines because it just looks like garbage. And it like, you would think you got one side with the lines and you got one blank side. You would just think, oh, they're going to know to sign on the blank side because that's what looks good. They don't know. Like they maybe they know and they don't care. I don't know, but they're gonna sign on that ruled side like all the time. Like it just happens. And it's not their fault. They probably have a stack of fan mail. They're going through it. They're trying to sign it as quickly as possible. They're probably not giving the most thought to like where they're gonna sign it, where the placement's gonna be, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I get it. Like they're doing this as a kindness to you. Like I'd say 99.9% of the time when somebody responds to fan mail, they do it for absolutely free. There's no like expectation that they'll be getting paid for it. It's basically out of the kindness of their heart and something that they do as a service and a courtesy to their fans. So beggars really can't be choosers on this kind of stuff. Like they're going out of their way to do you a favor, do you a solid. So if they don't do it perfectly, you really can't complain too much about it. So yeah, photos, index cards, trading cards, those are the main things that people usually send. You can send DVD covers, that kind of thing. I kind of find it tacky. It's not my favorite thing. But also Funko Pop windows, like that's like a big thing. If you flatten the Funko Pop, just take the pop out and then just flatten the box. Then this makes it really easy to ship and handle, and that's a good way to get your Funko Pop signed. And then once it comes back, you can just reassemble the box, put the pop back in, and you're good to go. I'm not the biggest fan of pops, so I don't really send them out, but it's a good way to get them signed. And even if like a lot of these people, they will do conventions and they will charge at these conventions like maybe $60 and up. $60 now is basically the floor for any autograph, basically. But when you're doing through the mail, like I said, even if they're somebody who does regularly charge a convention, they're probably not going to be charging for through the mail. Like almost never happens. Even if they did charge elsewhere, it's just like an unwritten, understood rule. This is something that they do for free. So yeah, last year, 2023, I think was a pretty good year for me in the hobby. I got a lot of successes, but I also sent out a pretty high volume. Like I spent a lot of time putting these letters together, writing the addresses on the envelope, and like every week I was sending out like decent sized stacks of fan mail. So the fact that I got back a good amount of replies is not necessarily surprising, but so some hobbyists have like, kind of talked about that the hobby is dying for a while, but like, I don't personally find that to be true. Like there's still tons of people out there who are signing. And just because somebody who was signing 10 or 20 years ago is now no longer signing. That's just kind of the way it goes. Like now, just because that guy doesn't sign doesn't mean that there's not somebody new in the hobby. There's not some new actor out there who's now, kind of taking their place and becoming a good signer and someone who's willing to reach out to fans and interact. So, just because, a certain generation might have stopped doesn't mean that there's not new people willing to sign and interact with fans. So it's not too late to get into the hobby and start enjoying collecting autographs through the mail, in my opinion. I could probably list off like a bunch of people who I got last year, but it'd probably be a lot easier just to go into my videos. Like for YouTube, I do the shorts and TikTok. I have all my videos there. Basically, whenever I get a success, I put a video of it so you guys can see who has been responding. I'll show you exactly what they sent. Typically, it's just they sign a couple of index cards. That's what I do for most people. Is I send 2 index cards. Typically, they'll sign both of them for me. Sometimes they only do one. They'll only just sign one of them, and sometimes they'll throw in a couple extra things. Sometimes they'll answer a questionnaire. Sometimes they might throw in some extra stickers from our production, that kind of thing. Sometimes there's nice notes attached. So you never know exactly what you're going to get. Some people are more generous with their time than others. Sometimes you just don't hear anything back at all. And sometimes you get a letter that just says return to sender. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the address was bad. It could be a perfectly good address, like somewhere that they currently, could be their current agent or their current, theater that they're appearing at, but maybe they're just not interested in receiving fan mail at this time. So it just kind of routinely gets rejected. So that's something that happens too. I show all of my successes, but I don't show you guys all of the ones that get returned. I don't show you guys how many I send out and that just don't get replied to at all. So like, if you go through my feed, you'll see that I did get a ton of successes, but like, I'd say probably 10 times more than that is what I actually sent out. So, don't be sad if you send out a letter and you don't get something back. Sometimes you have to write to a person multiple times, maybe try out different addresses to see that what works. And eventually you're probably going to get a response. And if not, try someone else. There's like, I've got a ton of interests, and if one actor, or not only do I like to do actors, but I like to do people who are like video game programmers, like influential people in the industry, or people who maybe have some kind of historical significance. I like to reach out to them as well. So if I don't get a response from somebody, I can always just go on to the next person. And there's always somebody who's doing something that interests me and that I want to kind of engage with a little bit more. So don't be dejected if you're not getting responses, especially if you're only writing to A-list celebrities. Like, of course, we all want to get a response from the Scarlett Johanssons and the Robert Downey Jr.'s of the world. But like the more popular that a celebrity is, just kind of as a general rule, the A-list celebrities are more difficult to get a response from than, B or C-list celebrity, or somebody who is maybe not in front of the camera but works behind the scenes as a visual effects artist, or like a stunt double, producer, even director sometimes can be a lot easier to get. So don't kind of get hung up on like, oh, this big name celebrity didn't respond to me. Like, that's probably not going to be very likely to happen for the most part. Not that doesn't happen, because sometimes it actually does happen. Like, I've gotten some really good responses from some bigger names, but typically it's the people who have smaller roles, because those big people, they get like a ton of fan mail. It's just like impossible. Like Taylor Swift, like she couldn't respond to all the fan mail she gets if she wanted to. Like, she just gets so much every single day. There's no way that a human being could possibly respond to that much, because she's such a big celebrity that everybody knows and everybody wants to contact them. And that's kind of just that side of fame. So that's really the big reason why it's so difficult to get those bigger celebrities. But if you really want to try for someone like that, Via Venue is probably the way to go because it's a temporary address, so it's less likely to be flooded with fan mail already. There's, less people will know about that address because it's going to take some research and digging into to actually kind of find out where to write to. For example, like for on the topic of Taylor Swift, somewhere to write to her might be perhaps a venue where she's going to be doing one of her concerts for the Eras tour, or there's rumors that she's going to be in the new Deadpool movie. So potentially somebody could write to the set of Deadpool 3, send a fan letter to Taylor Swift, and cross their fingers for a response. And I mean, if anybody was going to get a response from Taylor Swift, I would say somebody who did one of those two things is going to be the person who does it. So, and we'll see. I mean, like early on in her career, when she was like an unknown quantity for most people, like she did actually respond a lot to fan mail. But now that she's so big and it's impossible, it just doesn't happen anymore. Maybe you could get to her through Travis Kelce, perhaps. That's possible. Maybe. I don't know. I won't say I haven't tried it. But yeah, it's a cool hobby, and it's really accessible to everybody. The thing about getting people at conventions, for me, conventions is one of the funnest ways to do it because you actually get to meet the celebrity. Usually, you get to talk to them, but it's very expensive. Like between the admission ticket, which is $100 usually, it could be $300 or more if you're getting like a VIP pass. The parking, the gas to get there. If you're going out of town, there's lodging involved too. And that's just to get you in the door. And then the autograph ticket is anywhere between $60 and like $300, depending on how big the celebrity is. So it's a very, very big financial investment to meet some of these celebrities and get an autograph at a convention. Whereas doing it through the mail, writing a fan letter, asking for an autograph, your investment is like minimal, very minimal. You got like $1 invested in it. The only downside is that there's no guarantee of a response. So, what you're paying for at the convention is certainty and you get some interaction, which is like, for being honest, 50-second interaction there at a convention is like really good. 50 seconds is a long interaction at an autograph table. So that's not a very significant interaction that you're paying for. But you get the convenience, the certainty, and that interaction. But with fan mail, there's also a problem of authenticity. So you're not actually there to witness this, whatever you sent getting signed, right? So there's always kind of a question of, did the actor or whoever I'm sending to, did they actually sign it with their own hand, or was it perhaps a secretary? Was it perhaps an auto pen machine? Is this maybe a printed autograph? There's all these kinds of different scenarios where you don't know 100% if it's actually the person's hand that signed it that you were hoping. So if you're not familiar with what an auto pen machine is, you can just imagine a machine that kind of runs on a template. So they put in like the signature, like a template for the signature, and this machine has an arm with a pen on it, and it follows the template and it signs, whoever's ever signature that they're trying to sign. So it replicates the signature with an actual pen, and it can go onto any item that you send, right? So like, it doesn't matter like, oh, hey, they signed the photo that I sent. Well, it could still be signed by an auto pen machine, and it'll look good because the ink is raised. It's like, looks like it's done with live ink because it is, but it's just done by a machine. So, hey, Wander, I see you on YouTube. I'll definitely try and check out your collection for sure. But auto pens, they're really good. They're really good because they can do replicate a signature without the celebrity being there. And I say good, they're good for the agency, but they're bad for collectors because they can be a little bit tricky, but there are some telltale signs on them to spot them. So there's auto pens. That's something you got to worry about. There's what's called preprints. So essentially, a preprint is a photo that has been printed out with a signature already on it. Like it's part of basically the digital image. You got the image of a person, they got a signature on there, and they print it out, and it already comes out printed, signed. So if you look at the light and you kind of tilt the autograph on the light, you can see with a pre-printed autograph that it's not raised. The way that it'll kind of be gloss over it, the light will gloss over. You can kind of tell that it's like pretty uniform in there. So it has a certain look to it. And as you see more and more of these, you'll kind of develop an eye for it. And then of course there's the secretarial. So that just means that a secretary got your photo, they signed in the name of whoever it is that you requested an autograph from. This is basically just a straight up forgery. So if you're familiar with the authentic signature of the person that you're writing to and requesting an autograph from, then it should be more or less, easy to tell if it's a fake or not. Sometimes if a lot of people who are new or unfamiliar with the autograph, it might take you sending it to a third-party authenticator to find out. But typically the signatures aren't really very close. Like the secretaries don't do an incredible job of mimicking an authentic signature. So it's typically not too hard to spot these ones. And other than that, auto pens, preprints, secretarials, that's basically it other than stamps. So there are actually you can have like a rubber stamp that you stamp down on. They'll have the signature onto the rubber stamp so that all they have to do is take your photo and stamp it like that, and it leaves the impression of a signature on there. So that's kind of like a really cheap way of doing it. I think it's probably the easiest way or the easiest one of those kinds of fake autographs to spot, because usually the ink is laid down a little bit unevenly because the ink was applied to the rubber stamp in an uneven way. So there can be little like spots of missing ink along the signature, or sometimes you can see where the ends, the square edge of the stamp, maybe got some ink on it and made contact with the paper. So if there's kind of like a square box type looking thing around the signature, you can tell that it was a stamp that way. But someone who uses stamps, like, it's not really a widely done thing, but Mark Hamill is someone who's been known to use a stamp for their fan mail. But other than that, that's pretty much it. For different kinds of responses, other than, of course, getting an authentic hand sign response, which is what you want, right? So basically then I guess moving on to like actually writing the letter. Writing the letter is, for a lot of people, kind of the thing that they most like about the hobby. It can be a little bit cathartic to kind of write your thoughts out on a piece of paper and kind of express to somebody why you enjoy their work and what it is about a certain, might not even be their role necessarily that you're writing about. Like, for example, I like Star Wars a lot. Star Wars means a lot to me personally. So when I write to somebody who's maybe been an actor in one of the Star Wars movies, I won't necessarily just talk about their role in the movie, and of course I'll mention it, but I might talk about Star Wars in general and what the franchise kind of means as a bigger picture kind of idea. So you always want to kind of make it personal and like tell your own story about like why their work is important to you, because they get a ton of these letters, and even though your story might be similar to someone else's, I think it's important that you try and be genuine and honest in your letter, because I think that does come through and that does help you I think it increases your chance of getting a reply if you're being honest in your letter and you're being sincere. Now, that being said, I do have a tool on my website, talesfromthecollection.com. If you just go there, you can scroll to the bottom, and there is actually a fan mail generator there. I use this ChatGPT to help you generate a fan letter. So you kind of put into there your own ideas of like what you like about them, maybe what movies you like. And if you're having a hard time expressing yourself all by yourself, ChatGPT can kind of help you through this fan mail generator to kind of craft your letter. And from there, once it spits something out, you can tailor it. You can kind of get a feel for what a letter might look like and kind of start from scratch, or like use what it gives you. Really, the choice is yours from there. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. I guess TikTok, my audio looks like it's messed up, but my mic is currently being used by the computer for YouTube. So you can always hit me up on YouTube if TikTok isn't working out too well. Tone Gaming says, what would you say is your biggest through the mail success? So my biggest success would probably be Harrison Ford, I think. Harrison Ford is like a really difficult signer through the mail. He will typically sign maybe like for 2 people every year, I would say. But I was like very persistent in trying to get an autograph from him and make contact with him because he was my favorite actor. I used like basically every known address, like for businesses, for residences, for agencies, for like everything. I sent like at least to 30 different addresses that were in any way associated with Harrison Ford. And it took a while, but eventually I did get a response. He signed 2 trading cards for me for Han Solo from Star Wars. So yeah, Harrison Ford, definitely. I mean, like it's his autograph is like very expensive to get like through a private signing. I'd say it's about, probably would have been about at least $500 for one of those trading cards. So basically Harrison Ford just kind of handed me $1,000 bill with that one, which was very nice. But yeah, I don't know. I've got some really, really amazing successes throughout it's basically been about 20 years that I've been collecting now. So about 20 years of collecting, I've gotten some incredible successes. It's just been a lot of fun for me to do. And that's why I keep on doing it, because there's always new people to write. Like I never run out of people to write to, and I keep getting great responses. And I mean, the second that people stop responding to fan mail, then I guess I'll stop. But I mean, it hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen, I don't think, in 2024. So I think even if you're just starting the hobby now, or you just got into it recently, I think you're still in good shape. Like there's still plenty of people who are out there willing to sign for you, especially if you're willing to get creative and, get away from just like, who's like the biggest celebrity that I think that I like, and writing to them. But like, hey, maybe do I like Star Wars, or do I like this project? Like, who are the people who are actually instrumental in making this happen? Like, is it maybe the VFX artists, or is it the stunt workers or something like that? But yeah, well, I guess I gotta go. I'll be back in a little bit, but my son was in bed and he's calling me, so I gotta go and see what he needs. So I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back in a minute.